Yom al-Qiyamah, you're going to be asked about what you did. And I'm going to be asked about what I did. But because I said it, I'm going to give you as many of the opinions as possible. And I'll explain why those opinions have come about. The essential hadith, the most important hadith, is one which refers to something which is prohibited, which is, the Arabic word is ma'azif. And ma'azif, when it's translated into English, has been translated in different ways by different scholars. And those people that are interpreting it, interpret based on the different translations or different interpretations of the word. Now, one of the translations of the word, which is actually the one that's used in the most common translation of Al-Bukhari, is musical instruments. And therefore, all musical instruments, according to this understanding, are haram. So if it's music with a voice, then it's okay, singing in other words, because this is not a music, not ma'azif. And then the other say everything else is haram. This is the one extreme. And then there's another extreme which says all music is halal, because ma'azif doesn't refer to musical instruments, it's to do with something else. And these are the two extremes. So let me go over some of the different interpretations along that path, so that you can think what actually makes sense and which one is the correct one as far as my understanding is. There is an understanding which says all musical instruments are haram except the duff. And why? Because the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ witnessed the playing of the duff and he approved. So therefore some people say music's haram except the duff. Okay? And then others say no, wait a minute. The duff is a type of musical instrument, and therefore if the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ said this is okay, then therefore the principle is okay. And therefore musical instruments, ma'azif, cannot be translated as all musical instruments. It now must be something specific. It's not every musical, it must be some musical instruments. And therefore they will say some music is halal and some music is haram. That gives you a problem. How do you define what's halal and what's haram? Some say the word ma'azif actually means a watariyat. Watariyat means stringed instruments. Linguistically, there is no evidence to say that this is correct. And the debates around this interpretation of hadith are linguistic. And the strongest understanding is that actually that's not what it means. If you really want to know what ma'azif is, and mi'zafa, if you go back to the classical understanding of what this, it's a flute. It's a specific type of flute. So that some people say, musical instruments, halal, except the flute. And you can understand why. Because ma'azif, if you look back at what it means a flute. I don't go with that either. The reason why is because Ibn Hajar, when he explains what this flute is, it was what was the flute used for? Why this flute? Because of all the musical instruments, what the flute? What makes this flute so haram? That's what we should be asking. The reason why that particular flute was haram was because when people used to travel from place to place, before they entered into the valley, they would play the flute to call the jinn. And if they got a sign that it's okay to travel, they would go through the valley. So it was nothing to do with the flute itself. Why were they using the flute? It was to call the jinn. So what does ma'azif mean? It means the flute calling, the jinn calling flute is haram. But what is the flute? What is the jinn calling flute? If you listen to certain types of music, like I do, you'll know, whoa, that's satanic. I used to play guitar in a rock band, okay? And I know what's satanic or what ain't satanic, because some of the things that I used to listen to and play and attend, that's from the devil, man. And people are listening, people are laughing and smiling. It's because they know what I'm talking about. And it's not just rock music. You listen to certain... Does anyone know about the acid craze, which is no longer so big? But there's a time where acid music was a class of music. But why did they call it acid music? Because the beat was boom, 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 deliberately to go against your heart, so that when you dance to it, you go crazy. And if you take acid at the same time, you can fly, man. That's why they call it. And people say, I'm going to take acid tonight. What they meant by taking acid wasn't literally taking pills. They meant the whole scene. This is an acid party. Didn't necessarily mean that you took acid. It meant that there was an environment where the beat was just about going against your heartbeat. The dance was to knock your brains out. You didn't go to a party like that to remember what happened. You went to forget everything. That's what the party's about. And if you can remember what you did last night, that wasn't a party. That wasn't a party if you can remember what you did. It's only a party if you can't remember what you did and everybody's smiling at you. Because that was a party. Now that is what's meant by ma'azif. It's that calling of the jinn. It's not calling of the jinn per se. It's about the type of music which is there to destroy your heart. It's the type of music which is there to send you in a particular direction in your life. There was a few years going back, when I talk about satanic music, there are a few Norwegian and Swedish bands whose music was deliberately designed, these are rock bands that were deliberately designed to affect people's faith to the extent that it would turn them to Satan and call them to Satan. And when they used to play, churches would be burnt in Norway and Sweden. And it was a phenomenon that people, the Norwegian churches were saying, this music is evil. And I thought about it, I said, that's actually what it means by ma'azif. There are some music which is completely haram. Not all music, because some music lifts you up. And that's why the Prophet ﷺ allowed the duff. Not because it's a duff, but because the music lifted the spirit and it called you to good. Now that's too vague, in my view, to have a fatwa. So let's be more specific. Imam al-Ghazali says what I've said. Generally, music is permitted except that which is clearly haram. What's clearly haram? Three questions you should ask yourself. What is it calling you to? What is it calling you to? There is music which clearly calls you to do haram. The whole purpose of this song is about haram. And I've never really been into music videos. And my wife Sarah, she was actually one that introduced me. She says, you've got to watch this, it's haram. I thought, what? I told you like Sarah. She's kind of crazy. Love her crazy. But and she says, see, do you see why this is haram? I'm thinking, yeah. And then she explained, the reason why this music is haram, she's teaching me, is because this is inspired by pornography. You don't know much about pornography. I do. She's teaching me. I do. This is inspired by porn. And the dance moves, and she's into dance. Sarah's into dance, and she says this dance is inspired by sexual acts. I was thinking, now I know why it's haram. I knew it was haram, but... So she's now teaching me, what is actually haram about music. That music is completely haram. The purpose is to call you to haram. Then, so first one is, what is it calling you to? Second one, when? What is the time of this music? I said that I don't listen to music on Fridays. Why? Because this is a day I don't have time to waste. Friday only comes once a week. And I know the fada'im, the blessings of this day. I will not waste those blessings in lahu if I can avoid it. I want to cram as much into that Friday as I possibly can. So there's no room for music. Salah time, you can't play music. You've got something else more important to deal with. Ramadan, who's going to waste their time listening to music in Ramadan, even if it's Nusra Fatah Ali Khan? Why waste your time when there's more? So time. So what is it calling you to? What time is it? And what context is it? What context is this music being performed in? I mentioned the wedding. Weddings should have music. And I remember, there's one of the nasheed bands, one of the first European nasheed bands is a band called Sham. I think they came to Norway a couple of times. And they're all pals of mine. And so often we'd be invited to weddings to perform at weddings. And usually what would happen, we'd sing, I'd give a talk, and we'll just kind of entertain, so to speak. But one of the things that always annoyed me about Sham, and these are my brothers and I love them, is that some of their songs were just too religious for weddings. Certain qasidas that they were reading should be read in the middle of the night when you're talking to your Lord. They shouldn't be played with a duff. It's not appropriate to sing that kind of song because this is between you and Allah. And just playing it as a music to entertain is wrong. And I told them many a time, and then they said, okay, well, let's get a playlist. Which songs are appropriate to the wedding? And these should be salawat. They should be du'as which are about the marriage. They should be du'as about making people happy. And so they started to change the kind of songs that they sang at weddings. So the context is important. So if somebody invites you to an Iron Maiden concert, it's probably haram. Why? Because the whole context of what's going on will be built around alcohol. It will be built around a type of music which is not calling you to good because the context is wrong. Most parties, the music will be haram because of the context. So these are the three categories. So somebody asked me, is music haram? Depends on these three things. Any questions for further clarification on that answer? Please.
It means that what I have understand, it means for youngsters it is too difficult to understand which context is okay, which context is not okay.
Yeah, good.
For them it can be quite difficult to differentiate, okay, this context, it is marriage, it's okay. But now it is concert, okay, is it suddenly forbidden? For him, for a youngster who is grown up in Europe, either in Norway, for him it is quite difficult to understand and differentiate between these.
Very good point. The question, in case people didn't hear, was about, or clarification, was about, it's very difficult to teach young people in particular how to understand context. And when we come to children, this is one of the big challenges, is being able to communicate with young people, in particular your own children, about things like context, not just about music, but all kinds of contexts. And that's something that, as parents, is probably our biggest challenge. And it's about communication. And you have to understand the stages of a child's development. There is a time where you just stop them. You just don't let them do things. And then there's a time where they know that they can do things, but it's limited. I mean, my little one is 3. I let him watch YouTube. But we have YouTube for kids. And you have YouTube. Now at the beginning, just give him YouTube. He doesn't know what's going on anyway. Now he does. So now he has YouTube for kids. Why? Because he can't watch anything that's not already cleared, so to speak, for young people, for children. I don't need to tell him anything. I can't explain to him. Also, when I don't want him to listen to watch YouTube because it's time for Salah, I can't talk to him. He's only 3. I can't say, Beta, Salah time now, because I know what he's going to say. He's going to say, no Salah! He's 3. So what do? I switch the Wi-Fi off. He's 3, he doesn't know what I've done. Next year he's going to know how I switch the Wi-Fi off. He's going to go back and switch it on, isn't he? But hopefully in a couple of years' time he's going to get into the habits So as he gets older, we're going to explain different things. And then when I get into the intricacies, actually, Beta, ma'azif could mean this, it could mean that. Ibn Hajar said such and such. So you have to go through these different stages with your young people. And as they develop, you just got to be with them, and you've got to be willing to make mistakes. Because nobody, as you said, is perfect. When you make a mistake, you just got to say, I made a mistake, let's try again. And that sometimes means turning around to your child and saying, sorry, I got it wrong. And I don't think that's a bad thing. You know? So, anything further about music before I move on to dancing?
Yeah, one more thing.
Please.
Like, as I mentioned, it is difficult to differentiate one thing which can mislead somebody. Is it not better to make it
Excellent.
away from...
Right, very good point. There is a principle in fiqh, in jurisprudence, that if you can avoid haram by doing something, then that is the best way to avoid haram. If something can only be done, fard can only be done by doing something else, and that itself becomes fard. So therefore, if you can avoid doing haram by doing such and such, then you do it. And that's an important principle. It's not contradicting what I'm saying. It's actually supporting what I'm saying. There are times where I will face the situation where I just have to say, no, you can't go. And the answer is, but why? And the answer is, no, you can't go. And that's the difficulty of parenting. You have to come to that point, everybody comes to that point, where it's no. And that's the end of discussion. And that's the skill of parenting, because if you can't get to that point, I mean, all of it is about negotiating and discussing and taking the child with, but there is a point where it has to draw a limit. And you'll know where that point is. And that's every individual, with every individual child, has to come